Should immigration reform efforts in Congress be delayed because of the Boston Marathon bombings? Or should Congress take up the plan that would provide a pathway to citizenship for the 12 million immigrants who are currently in this country illegally? This is today's big question. I'm Joy Cardine. This is the Ideas Network of Wisconsin Public Radio. It's coming up on 8 minutes past 7 o'clock on this Wednesday, April 24th. Some Republican lawmakers are urging Congress to slow down efforts for immigration reform in light of last week's Boston Marathon bombing, citing national security concerns. Others are saying that the push should go forward as planned, saying that comprehensive immigration reform is needed and could benefit national security. We will hear from two guests who have different perspectives on this issue, and we welcome your questions and your views, too, at 1-800-642-1234, or send an email to talk@wpr.org. You can also post on the Joy Cardine Show Facebook page. We have one guest who supports comprehensive immigration reform and says there's no reason to delay it based on the Boston bombings. He is Peter Suderman, senior editor at Reason Magazine and at Reason.com. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us. And also a guest who does not support the proposal for comprehensive immigration reform, not if it includes what he calls amnesty, and says that the effort should not be rushed due to national security concerns. He is William Gheen, president and spokesperson for Americans for Legal Immigration PAC. Good morning.
Good morning.
Well, let's start with you, Peter Suderman. Why should the immigration reform efforts proceed as usual?
Well, if immigration reform was a good idea before the Boston bombing, it's still a good idea now. So I should actually clarify, I don't support the entire immigration reform package that we're seeing, the entire and specific immigration reform package that we're seeing going through Congress right now. I have some reservations about it. But in general, I think that some kind of immigration reform is necessary to figure out some way to grant legal status and a path to legal status and a path to citizenship for the 10 to 12 million people who are currently here illegally. And I just don't think that Boston has much to do with those people, with the 10 to 12 million people right there out there right now who don't have legal status. And it's really very difficult to figure out what you could do through an immigration reform plan through the immigration system to catch folks like the Boston bombers.
Yeah, well, we'll go into more details as we go along. Let me get William Gheen to tell us why you think the Boston bombings ought to put the brakes on comprehensive immigration reform.
Well, if comprehensive immigration reform amnesty is so wonderful as some of the supporters would say, they shouldn't fear slowing it down and for us being methodical and taking our time with this. They're wanting to rush this, and they know that they want to rush this because buried in the 844 pages of the bill that they had originally intended on to be voting on within days of handing out to people are a lot of things that the public won't like. And they know that. And they know that the more that the public has time to discuss what's in that bill, find out what's in that bill, the greater the chances are that it's going to fail. Also, your other guest said that it's foregone conclusion. Everybody wants this thing, and that's just not true. We have several polls, like the recent one from the Pulse Opinion Research on April 15th, showing that 72% of all Americans favor an enforcement approach instead of the appeasement and amnesty approach offered by this bill. We have immigration-related topics to the Boston terrorist attack, to the D.C. sniper terrorist attack conducted by an illegal immigrant, to the 9/11 terrorist attack. You can be rest assured that the people out there want our government to do its primary function, which is to protect the people inside this country from those that would come in amongst us, into our midst, and cause us harm. And obviously, they are not doing that because not only are we having these high-profile attacks like Boston, but Americans are being harmed by illegal immigrants in lots of other ways, by losing their jobs, losing their homes, and then there's thousands of Americans that are being killed by illegal immigrants each year.
Your response to that, Peter Suderman?
Well, when it comes to the Boston bombing, it's just very difficult to figure out anything that could be done through immigration law to have prevented those particular attacks. The two brothers who bombed, who have been accused of bombing the Boston Marathon, immigrated here when they were 8 and 15 and appear to have been radicalized later. It's impossible. There's no way that you could check those people for check children for the possibility that they might eventually be radicalized. That's not something that immigration authorities can do. That's not something that law enforcement can do. I do think there was a pretty serious law enforcement and intelligence failure in that the older brother was identified to the FBI a couple of years ago as a potential threat and then cleared. But that was a law enforcement failure, and that was a narrow issue of an intelligence and law enforcement failure. It doesn't really have anything to do with immigration reform at all. And like I said, if this bill was a good idea beforehand, it's still a good idea. And conversely, if it's not a good idea, it's still not a good idea. But the Boston just doesn't have anything to do with it.
So William Gheen, why should what Peter Suderman called a law enforcement failure with one of the Boston Marathon suspects hold up the immigration reform, at least debate in Congress?
We don't even know what's happened with Boston yet. I mean, there's been a lot of confusing stories. There hasn't been any full dig-in. We've had some basic, reports about some FBI failures and things like that, but this is the type of thing that needs a more forensic study. Otherwise, you could possibly pass a bill that's going to increase the chances of terrorism attacks against our citizens instead of decreasing it. And the reason that we differ here between me and Peter's approaching this is comprehensive immigration reform. The main goal is to let illegal immigrants come out of the shadows and live legally amongst us. I have the majority opinion of American citizens. When I hear the terms immigration reforms, I start thinking that the government's going to start actually doing its job and adequately enforce our existing border and immigration laws to the degree to protect American jobs, wages, taxpayer resources, and lives from individual crimes committed by the gangs and the drunk drivers that kill Americans versus the immigrants and the illegal immigrants that come here and conduct terrorist attacks. So when I hear immigration reform, I think of the government doing a better job of protecting our citizens in many ways. Peter hears we're going to let illegal immigrants eventually become voters, mostly Democrat, and change politics in this country for the next 50 years.
Peter?
So, as far as, immigration enforcement goes, if you want immigration enforcement, the Obama administration is giving it to you. It has deported more than 1 million immigrants already. It has deported immigrants faster than the Bush administration, and it shows no sign of letting up. And so, we are already deporting people pretty much as fast as is plausible. And so what we need to do is figure out what to do with the 10 or 12 million people who are here illegally, and how to treat them fairly and humanely. And what we don't need to do is try to tie this to political, to non-related events for political gain, because, like I said, the Boston bombing is just not related in any direct way to the immigration reform law.
Yeah. Well, actually, one of the Boston bombers was convicted of domestic violence as an immigrant before he was a citizen, and under existing federal law, he was deportable. However, Obama has stopped almost all deportations inside the United States until after an illegal immigrant has murdered or raped a U.S. citizen. The numbers, which was one of the lies that Obama is telling that I really find offensive, Obama has started to count the voluntary departures, which are the people that ran across the border last night that they put back in Mexico that'll sneak in tonight. He started counting those to up his types of numbers to make it look like he's a big deporter, when actually he's just counting his numbers in different methods than prior administrations. In truth, I have studied the Obama administration's true policy versus what they're telling people, and Barack Obama has been the best friend an illegal immigrant in this country has ever had. He has practically overwritten the U.S. laws and decreed amnesty, even though it says specifically in the United States Constitution that our immigration policy is to be set by Congress. Right now, we're operating outside of existing federal law, outside of the United States Constitution, and under some type of dictate that doesn't even rise to the level of being an official executive order. Obama is currently ruling on immigration issues by memo, and the people of the United States that find immigration to be an important issue are currently being governed by memos.
Let me shift the focus to the pathway to citizenship, to the granting of legal status to those who are currently in this country illegally, presuming they qualify. Peter Suderman, why do you think that is necessary in an immigration reform bill?
I mean, it's the crucial component. Again, there are 10 or 12 million people here who are here illegally. It is highly implausible, if not impossible, that we are going to deport even a large percentage of them. And so the big question for anyone looking at immigration policy is, what do we do then? What do we do with the people who are here? How do we treat them fairly? How do we integrate them into the economy? Help make them more productive citizens? Help make them legal and able to work within our economy and in a way that is not in a way that they don't have to hide what they're doing. They're already working here. They're already paying taxes. What we need to do is figure out how to say, okay, this is a good thing. Let's regularize this and make this work.
Yeah, and what's wrong with that, William Gheen?
Well, I'll tell you what's wrong with it. It's going to permanently destroy the borders forevermore. Right now, over 80+% of the people in the United States are screaming at the top of their lungs, secure the border, secure the border. I mean, it's incontrovertible. Even the designer polls paid by the pro-amnesty people show, secure the border, secure the border. Well, here we are, and we can't get the border secured. We can get Janet Napolitano to lie to us from the Obama administration and say, oh, they're more secure than ever, which is not true. But the truth of the matter is we can't get the border secured now. If illegal immigrants form an eventual block of another 10 to 20 million predominantly Democrat voting constituents in the country, that will be the end of the borders for the United States forevermore. We can't get them secured now. There will be no hope for adequate immigration law enforcement or border security in the future if America swallows this comprehensive immigration reform poison pill and lets these people stay on the path to citizenship. What's going to happen is the resistance, like your body's the resistance to any type of foreign objects or allergies or things that aren't supposed to be there, when it collapses, okay, there's over 1 billion people estimated that would come to the United States if allowed. A great green light is being sent all around the globe today that America is on her knees. She will not enforce her laws, and you can have what you want. You can come here illegally, and eventually you may be asked to pay a fine or something, and then you get to stay. People don't understand how many people are going to rush through the floodgates. People do not understand that illegal entries have doubled at the border just because we're discussing this at all. They spiked every time that George Bush mentioned that he would do this as well. And if you pass this, people, if you allow Congress to do this, if you accept Comprehensive Immigration Reform Amnesty, you have to look forward to a borderless society where so many people are going to pour into this country from third world origins that you're going to see them literally sitting on your sidewalks and in your yards within 5 years.
Let's think on that for a moment and remind listeners that this is the big question. We are talking about whether comprehensive immigration reform that would grant legal status or provide a pathway to citizenship for those currently in this country illegally should proceed as planned, maybe even push forward more quickly, or should it be slowed down because of the Boston Marathon bombings? 1-800-642-1234 or send an email to talk@wpr.org. You can also post on the Joy Cardine Show Facebook page. This is the Ideas Network of Wisconsin Public Radio. Checking the weather forecast for today, partly to mostly cloudy. There is a slight chance of rain or snow this afternoon. Highs will be in the mid to upper 40s. Stay with us here on the Ideas Network. Coming up this afternoon after 3 o'clock, we'll hear from a guest who will talk about the unnecessary hurdles and bureaucracy that are involved in international adoptions. That's coming up after 3 this afternoon. We are talking with two guests about immigration reform. One who says it slow down, one who says proceed. William Gheen is president and spokesperson for Americans for Legal Immigration, and Peter Suderman is senior editor at Reason Magazine and at Reason.com. Dave in Menominee, Michigan emails, immigration reform is set to address the southern border, from what I understand. The two people in Boston were from Europe. Are Republicans talking about stopping Europeans from coming here too? This is nothing more than Republicans using any excuse possible to keep anything from being done in our Congress while a Democrat is in office, presumably in the presidency. William Gheen, what about that?
Well, I'm trying to stop this bill because I truly believe that it's not what the American public wants from the certified polling that I've seen on what they want. And the American citizens here have a right to choose who comes here legally versus illegally, and how many people come here legally. And that's not happening right now. Right now, the American public has been dispossessed of power and self-governance. They have said, we don't want illegal immigration. We want the border secured. But yet illegal immigration has continued, is supported by our government. Over 57% of the people in the country rightfully believe that our government is actually encouraging illegal immigration, and that's true through the woefully inadequate enforcement of our existing border and immigration laws. While some listeners may not be sympathetic to the Americans that feel this way, many of them are probably lucky enough not to have had their jobs, their community, or their particular things in life that they value, including the health and well-being of their loved ones, negatively impacted by illegal immigration, as many of us have in the other high-impact states. So, we're trying to say that, and plus the legal immigration levels, because, we're supportive of legal immigration through my organization, have many fine legal immigrants that agree with us on our pro-enforcement stance here. We've been letting over 1.5 million people legally enter the United States each year, which is more than any other nation on the earth. It's a level of hyper legal immigration, almost unsustainable legal immigration, where financial elites, large corporations, are seeking to synthetically inflate certain markets and parts of the economy through population growth, and they don't care who gets hurt. They don't care if the American workers get hurt. They don't care if American schools are paralyzed by bilingual challenges and cultural conflicts. They don't care if L.A. and other major cities erupt into, ethnic strife between blacks and Hispanics. They're just out to make a buck.
Let me jump in, because we do need Peter Suderman to comment on a couple of major points that Mr. Gheen has recently made. First off, I guess your reaction to that businesses want this to happen.
Businesses, we already know that there is substantial employment of undocumented immigrants around the nation, and businesses would prefer to be able to do this legally, and to have workers who can who can and will do the jobs that they need done. It's a myth. I think largely that immigrants end up taking American jobs, which you actually see in states where they have really, really tightened controls on employers hiring immigrants, is that those jobs just end up going away. And so the choice is not hire an immigrant or hire an American. In many cases, it's hire an immigrant or hire no one at all, and that's worse for the economy. As to the enforcement question, I just think that it's a bit of a stretch, really a big stretch, to say that what we need is more enforcement, given how much we have beefed up enforcement in the last couple of years already. It's not just that we are deporting more than 1 million people under the Obama administration faster than the Bush administration deported people. It's that in the last 5 years we have added 650 miles of vehicle fencing, 300 miles of pedestrian fencing at the southern border, a couple hundred vehicle barriers. We have increased effective operational control of the southern border from about 31% in 2007 to about 57%. We have really ramped up enforcement, and so that's not what we need at this point. What we actually need is to figure out how to deal with the people who are already here and who are not going away.
Yeah. Well, what about Mr. Gheen's contention that if we grant legal status to these immigrants who are here illegally, that essentially that's just going to mean open borders, that there's going to be no border security after that? Because people will
the
know
border
nothing.
security that we have is not going away. Again, 650 miles of additional fence, 300 miles of pedestrian fencing. That's not going away because of an immigration reform bill. In fact, it looks pretty likely that any immigration reform bill is going to call for additional border security measures. But as far as immigration goes, I think what we need is more immigration, more legal immigration. Immigration is good for the economy. It's good for American workers. It's good for the overall economy. And in a time when the economy is in a slump, what we actually need is more immigration. And we need to figure out how to make it faster, easier, and more legal at more places.
Andrea in Madison is with us. Hello, Andrea.
Hi. Yeah. I had called with. It actually had to do with some earlier statements that one of the guests had said. I wanted to point out, first of all, that it is a false statement to have said that the D.C. snipers had anything to do with immigration. These were two African-American men whose ancestors had been stolen from their homelands and brought over here against their will and forced into slavery. That's how they came to this, or their ancestors came to this country, and one of them actually was a veteran. John Allen Muhammad had served in the Gulf War. So that I think your guest needs to retract that statement.
Well, can I address?
Yes,
quick?
Go ahead, Mr. Gheen.
Yeah, the younger D.C. sniper, John Lee Malvo, arrived in the United States in 1981 as an illegal immigrant into Miami. And later, he was arrested by some local police in a northern state who were very concerned about him. They got him. They arrested him over a significant traffic problem, but he made comments that upset the concerned the police officers. So they demanded the Immigration Customs Enforcement pick up the illegal immigrant John Lee Malvo, which they did. But then they released him into the United States without deporting him, and that's why all those people in D.C. were killed.
Well, we're going to have to leave that point there because we have news from NPR coming up and Wisconsin Public Radio. But we will continue after the news talking with William Gheen, who is president and spokesperson for Americans for Legal Immigration, PAC. We will also be talking with Peter Suderman, senior editor at Reason Magazine and at Reason.com. Peter Suderman says the Boston Marathon bombings should not slow down immigration reform. William Gheen says the bombing should make Congress take a step back. We'll continue after the news. I'm Joy Cardine. This is the Ideas Network of Wisconsin Public Radio. Some Republican lawmakers are urging Congress to hit the brakes on immigration reform after last week's bombings of the Boston Marathon, citing national security concerns. Others are saying the push should go forward as planned. I'm Joy Cardine. This is the Ideas Network of Wisconsin Public Radio. It's coming up on 7:37 on this Wednesday, April 24th. We have two guests with us from different viewpoints on this week's big question. Should an overhaul of the nation's immigration laws be slowed down to consider the latest attacks? 1-800-642-1234 or send an email to talk@wpr.org. You can also post on the Joy Cardine Show Facebook page. Our guests are Peter Suderman, senior editor at Reason Magazine and at Reason.com, who says that immigration reform efforts should proceed, and William Gheen, president and spokesperson for Americans for Legal Immigration, who says that the immigration reform efforts should slow down to consider the Boston Marathon bombings. Let's go back to the phones. Joe in Duluth is with us next. Hello, Joe.
Hey, hi. I believe in legal immigration. I don't believe you should give people who are criminals, lawbreakers who have decided to break the law, I don't think you should give them something for breaking the law. I think it's a bad thing.
Yeah. What if?
The way it goes against because of the Boston Marathon deal, there is a connection with illegal immigration. It has to do with somebody overstayed his visa for he was supposed to go to school in a different town, ended up living in Boston, and he was injured at the Boston Marathon bombing, and probably was the person who was financing the whole thing. But
well, you don't know that, and I don't think the FBI thinks that. But let's, Peter Suderman, why should we grant legal status to immigrants who are in this country illegally? Why should they be rewarded for breaking the law?
Again, what I think is that what we need is to figure out a way to deal with people who are here and who are not going anywhere. And that's just the way it is that's the fact of the matter, is that we're not going to deport even a large fraction of those people. But the other thing is, so it's good for those people, but it's also good for our economy. We've seen studies that show that if you legalize those folks and increase, even if you are increasing border protection at the southern border at the same time, you're looking at a 0.5% of GDP growth increase difference, and that's really huge when we're, especially in a sluggish economy where we're growing at only 1.5% a year or so. You bump that up to 2%, especially over time. You're really talking about huge sort of wave effects coming up into the future on the economy. And so, what we want is to figure out a way to humanely deal with those people, to integrate them into the economy in a way that is productive for them and productive for us. And that means figuring out some way to let them have a path to legal status and eventually citizenship.
Mm-hmm. William Gheen?
Well, look, your last two callers have been confused about this issue. One didn't know that one of the D.C. snipers was an illegal immigrant. The other has a theory about the Saudi national that was arrested. What the other side, my opponents are arguing here, is that we've got to rush this bill through right away. We've got to get it through. We've got to vote on it now. I'm saying, look, hey, regardless of where you're at on this issue, let's take time with this. This is a very important bill. It's 849 pages, and my concern isn't just to slow it down because of the Boston bombing, which I do believe is part of it, and I'll give you an example of why. But I want to slow it down because I want everyone to understand what this bill is going to do, what's buried in the bill, what its future impact is going to be on the country before they vote on it. They're arguing that we shouldn't do that. They're arguing we shouldn't have that type of discussion about this legislation. I'm arguing that we should all practice that. I'll give you one example. The Department of Homeland Security Chief, Janet Napolitano, in my opinion, lied to Congress yesterday, lied when asked when Senator Ted Poe, who asked her if she had read the bill. Now, this is 5 days after the bill was filed at 3 o'clock in the morning. They filed this bill at 3 a.m. Now, I don't know if there were any Holocaust cloaks or goats involved. I don't know what a 3 a.m. ritual filing of a bill is like, but that's when Janet Napolitano confirmed to Senator Cruz that she received the bill. Well, since that time, the Boston bombing occurred. She's the head of the Department of Homeland Security. She's supposed to be neck deep in the command center dealing with all of that. And some people speculate that this 844-page bill would take most people 2 to 3 days to read it out loud if you did nothing else. You didn't eat, you didn't shower, you didn't sleep. So he asked Janet Napolitano, have you read the bill? And Janet Napolitano says, yes, I've read the bill. Senator Cruz hasn't finished reading all the bill yet. I've been in the bill. I haven't been humanly possible for me to finish reading the bill, but I'm not the director of Homeland Security during the most major terrorist attack since 9/11. So when we've got the Obama administration's Janet Napolitano lying to Congress about having read the bill, either she's lying about when she reading the bill or when she received the bill, and they say, well, let's get this through. And I'm like, whoa.
Well, you would want everybody to read the bill. We would all want everybody to read the bill. You're just using, some would say, the Boston Marathon bombings as a ploy to stop this bill from passing.
I have said very clearly that I do not want this bill to pass, and I have said very clearly that I want it slowed down for the reasons I just enumerated, that there are things within the bill that people need to know about, discuss, and have an opinion on, and have a chance to convey that opinion with their lawmakers before they vote on it, which is how I differ with the others, and that I feel that the Boston bombing is a component of it, since we were attacked by 2 immigrants, recent immigrants, including one that they swore in on 9/11 of last year. How about that? How about that? Here we are, all these years after 9/11, when our immigration laws were grotesquely violated, and terrorists were here operating with 3 and 4 licenses apiece and being pulled over by the cops when they were in violation of their visa status, and one even received their approval for their student visa after they were dead from smashing a plane into our citizens. And here we are with more immigration-related terrorism attacks added to a long line of immigration-related terrorism attacks. And I want everybody just to slow down so that we can get accurate information, even after 2 of your callers call in with confusing, perhaps inaccurate information. And all of a sudden, I'm a bad guy who's using terrorism to get my way with a bill. You know, people can say whatever they want about me. I know that I'm doing this because I care about my country and I care about what happens here, and I'm saying let's slow down and let's be rational and let's be cautious.
And Peter Suderman, what's wrong with slowing down and making sure we all read this bill and know what's in it?
The thing is here that the calls to slow this down right now really amount to a lot of political excuse-making. People have tried to tie the immigration reform bill that has basically nothing to do with the Boston bombings to a deeply horrific, tragic event. And it's really kind of cynical, and it's really very political, and it just doesn't have anything to do with the policy at hand. What we saw in the Boston bombing was 2 children who immigrated here from Europe and appear to have been radicalized after immigrating to the United States. That is not really what we're talking about at all with the immigration reform law, which is about if it's about border protection, it's about border protection at the southern border, not immigration from Europe. And it's about the 10 or 12 million people, the vast majority of whom are not criminals or terrorists of any kind, but simply people who want to work legally and people who want to be here legally and integrate with society and the economy, and what we can and should do with them, not about these 2 brothers who have been accused of perpetrating the bombings.
Jill in Bristol is with us next. Hello, Jill.
Hi. I just wanted to state that I live with an immigrant. My in-laws were immigrants from Norway. I work with an immigrant from Czech Republic and from other areas. And I find such the opposite of what they're portraying immigrants to be, because the people I know work extremely hard at being law-abiding and contributors to society. And I think some immigrants are, and I think it's a very big minority of immigrants that are not law-abiding. And the portrayal is really sickening. And the other thing is, Timothy McVeigh was not an immigrant. Anybody in any country, I mean, look at the skinheads in this country. I think we have plenty of homegrown problems without portraying immigrants as something they're not.
William Gheen.
Well, we have 12 to 20 million illegal immigrants in this country, and none of them are law-abiding. They have broken at least our visa and border laws at a bare minimum. However, most also engage in document fraud and or identity theft, which wrecks American lives. Now, while you may have had some very pleasant experiences with the immigrants you know, as I have had with the ones that I know, and I represent an organization who's picked its name to pay homage to the honorable immigrant, many of our immigrant supporters do not like the constant comparison of illegal aliens with well, I know I'm not supposed to even say illegal immigrant in today's Big Brother world. Please don't tell the Associated Press. But they don't like the comparison between people who have come here showing honor for our political system and our laws to people who paid drug smugglers thousands of dollars to sneak into the country under the cover of darkness last night. The truth of the matter is, our border and immigration law enforcement has been so lax, so deplorable, that if there's a terrorist on the planet that wants to hurt us that's not here already, then they're probably too stupid for us to have to worry about them.
Do you have a response to that, Peter Suderman?
Well, just as far as the immigration from the southern border goes and the porous border, a big part of the problem that we have is that the current immigration process to immigrate legally is so long and so difficult and so arduous that we have created a big black market in human smuggling over the border and created, opportunities there. And as we see with just about everything, if you make something difficult or illegal, you see a black market that springs up in proportion. And so if we want to get rid of the black market for immigrants for crossing the border at the South, what we really need to do is figure out ways to make immigration faster, easier, simpler, more straightforward for everyone and anyone.
All right, time for closing statements, and we'll start with Peter Suderman. What do you want Congress to do about immigration reform?
They should proceed as planned, and they should look for ways to humanely integrate the people who are here already into the economy. What can we do that's good for them and good for us? And in general, the answer to that question is provide them with a pathway to legalization and to citizenship. They're going to be better off. We're going to be better off. The overall economy is going to be better off. That's a good thing for everyone in America.
Thank you very much for being with us. William Gheen, what do you want Congress to do about immigration reform?
To stop any form of amnesty or legalization and focus on enforcing our existing and border immigration laws, which over time would reverse illegal immigration, like the reversal we saw just before Obama decreed a form of amnesty. I often feel like I'm at the base of a dam, the downriver side of a dam, and there's more water spilling over the dam than any other dam in the world. And then there's these big holes forming, which are illegal immigration. And I'm trying to patch up this hole, and someone else on my side's over here. And Peter and his side with the Comprehensive Immigration Reform Amnesty want to take a sledgehammer to the whole dam. And I don't think people understand what it's going to be like if they break that whole dam, and that's what they'll do if they pass this bill.
Thank you very much for being with us. William Gheen, President and Spokesperson for Americans for Legal Immigration, and Peter Suderman, Senior Editor at Reason Magazine and at Reason.com. So now you've heard both sides of today's big